welcome to the Stanley Street Social Podcast. My name is Alex Clements. I'm here with Dr. David Spindler for the third time now. You're a regular. If you haven't caught up already, we did an initial podcast which went into your career. That was with Campbell. That was back in 2019, start of 2019.
Yeah, Cadell's, I think. Yeah.
Cadell's. Then the start of this year, I caught up with you. We chatted about, the big talking point was your theory on free watts or happy watts on a study that you're doing.
My PhD.
And so your PhD. So if you want to see that, that's in our archives. And then today we're here. You're in Perth. You're in quarantine. We're going to chat about the COVID year, the psychological effect of the COVID year. So welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, mate. In lockdown here in a lovely hotel room in Perth for the next 14 days. So, had nothing to do. So here we are.
So your role this year, same as every other year, working with athletes. You've got athletes within your suite. But a roller coaster year for them. Lots of uncertainty around the racing, around the teams, around pay, around what's next, around safety. What happened in terms of your work?
I've got busy quite quickly, actually, around UAE tour. Even sort of my situation, we changed. We stayed in Australia, so my family. In and around the whole COVID period. My children, so I have a daughter who has some special needs and meant that it wasn't viable for us to go into Europe. So they stayed at home. When it comes to my athletes, it was a very difficult year for them because there was a lot of uncertainty initially. First of all, the guys at the UAE tour were locked in a hotel room like I am now, but didn't have any real idea of when they could get out. So that was the initial excrement hitting the fan. So from that, it just sort of escalated really quickly. And me doing a lot of work from my place in Shellharbour, Australia, and doing a lot of Zoom calls and Skype and WhatsApp and a lot of people, a lot of athletes ringing me to say, can we please work together? I'm struggling. So, sort of business got quick really, really quickly. And I wish it didn't, but it did. Yeah.
What were they struggling with things that wouldn't be occurring in a normal COVID year?
Oh, yeah, most definitely. First of all, it was their career was effectively finished, pretty much. They didn't know what or how a global pandemic would do to what their sport is. The sport, their means of joy, their means of happiness, their means of income had just ceased within a 24-hour period. So, and then from that, there was a few teams that decided that they'd cut the pay of riders, for various reasons, whether people agree with that or not, it's not really for discussion. However, there's a lot of athletes that needed that income. And the full income to then, they need to live too. And I put a lot of pressure on quite a few athletes financially, just by teams deciding that they'd cut pay. Yes.
What do you go through with an athlete when they come to you? They go, David, Mitchell and Scott's just cut my pay by 70% or yada yada yada. What kind of process do you go through? Bahrain, everyone else.
Yeah, there was a few. First of all, take stock. a lot of the time we'd actually have a financial conversation of where they were, what they actually needed to survive, how they could, move forward, and what their burn rate was specifically, and then from that you can start to minimise some anxiety in regards to some financial security more than anything, and then try and get them to be a little bit more cognizant of where they were in life, and if they could sort of how long they could survive on that 30%, or whatever, or some were 50, some were how long they could survive, and that kind of, once they took stock, a lot of the time that anxiety was minimised. However, it's obviously a lot of lost money. But there's a lot of guys there that are professional cyclists aren't on, or some are on quite a small wage, but a lot of them are on a rather large amount of money. And when you lose 70% of the income, that's a significant amount of money that's lost. So yeah, it's huge. That was a huge driver of a lot of people.
Yeah, well, especially when they've got such a short bracket of time to earn their money.
Yeah,
and if you
they had no idea of when that income would then resume, whether it ever would resume. So,
and then also throw in there the team longevity.
Yep. Yeah, not just that too. Like they all prefacing that with every single athlete knew that there was a lot of other people within society that had lost their jobs and had lost humans within their family, to the global pandemic. So it wasn't a selfish thing by any stretch of the imagination, but however, it was a stressor, so therefore it had to be worked through.
Was it do you think it was, as you said, there's so many, financial is one element of it. And then there's also the fact that there is a global pandemic and they're locked in their Spanish apartment or wherever they are. Does that kind of inflame the situation?
Yeah, because you end up vortexing yourself, because you actually, your frontal lobe, they sort of kicks in and you go through all of the scenarios, the what ifs, and then it just spirals downwards quite quickly if you don't have somebody that you can actually have a conversation with. And that wasn't me specifically, but a lot of athletes just went to their managers or went to mentors or whoever. But yeah, some came to me.
You mentioned before the joy aspect. It's not just a profession, a source of income. That is one element of it. Do you think for athletes, this was like maybe the first time that had been actually ripped away from them? That was the first time that actually maybe experienced a world without cycling for who knows how long?
Athletics in general, not just cycling, just them without being able to move. So not only, their income source, but it's, I think in the last podcast that we did, we were talking about what happens when you retire. With the the dopamine and serotonin in your brain that needs activity to then think that it's still healthy. You train for the classics and then stop and do 4/5 of nothing for over 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. Your brain thinks it's retired. So it's going to go into that. It's going to think that it's slightly down at the very least. I had some pretty gut-wrenching, but also rather hilarious at times conversations with athletes about the lockdown procedure. Had one athlete thinking that they were going to buy a jet ski to get them across the English Channel because they were stuck on one side and their family was on another. That was pretty impressive. Yeah.
Like on the kind of retirement piece, they almost get like a sample of what it's like. Like, is this almost a positive for some of them that are, or kind of anyone? It's anyone that's in their professional career. It's like, okay, that's coming.
Yeah. And I think there'd be a lot of athletes now, not just in cycling, looking to transition better, or actually at least thinking about it, which can only be a good thing.
Yeah. So did your role increase with their coaches, with that, like you talked about, having that 6 weeks off, or that time off, or what happens when you stop cycling completely? Were you working with their coaches a bit more?
Oh, some coaches, definitely. So there was a lot of different theories on how to get through this that lockdown period, or just get through to the start of racing again, whenever that was going to be. There's a period there where there was no set date, that was the most difficult from a professional perspective, not just for me, because I was dealing with a lot of athletes, but also from the athlete side, because they had no end date to this. They didn't know when they could start again. So that was, and then how each team wanted their athletes to either maintain fitness or keep fitness somehow, or because no one was saying it's going to be on the 5th of June you're going to start whatever. So that wasn't happening in April. So it was was a difficult time.
Yeah. So if a coach came to you in April and said, well, what should I do? I've got this unknown start date. How do I train and I've never been in this situation before. How do I train my athlete?
That conversation never happened with me. That's for a lot of them. A lot of the teams just went into their own sort of lockdown themselves and went, okay, this is how we're going to deal with our athletes. This is how we'd like them to be trained, and how the structure within our team will look like. And then from there, the athletes to say, okay, I've got, some athletes were doing 25 hours on a trainer, but there's others that did 8. So a week, that is. But and then there's ones that are like, okay, I'm just in a maintenance phase until they tell me a date, and then I'm going to rev up. And there's others that go, no, I'm training through this, and then by the time I get out, I'm going to be bombing. And it worked for some. Both ways worked, and both ways didn't. So I don't think there was a right or wrong. It just some did exceptional, and others not so much.
We did we had like a look back at the year last week on the podcast with Campbell, and we looked at like some of the teams that came out. Obviously there was Quickstep, which is just almost always dominant. But looking at Sunweb, and not a surprise Jumbo, but Jumbo really stepped up to the plate. Do you think they managed it better? Does that come from a team level? And does that come from this part, or is that a much longer process that was kind of started years ago?
I think both, actually, is my opinion. If you have a look at Visma, they've got a really massively science-backed program now. They've recruited backroom staff that are world leaders in their field when it comes to sports science and nutrition and exercise phys. They've got some amazing people within that team, and that are ahead of the curve when it comes to high performance, and that shows. Also, one of the bigger budgets as well to be able to do that. Sunweb have a really structured program. They've got really good staff as well, and INEOS is exactly the same. So I think there wasn't a massive worry. The ones that did really well didn't really put a lot of worth in virtual racing, put it that way, in the lockdown, and they're more worried about the racing at the end. So we're more worried about real racing rather than virtual. That's for sure.
Is do you have any athletes inside Quickstep? Maybe. Is it like a, see, because I think it's reasonably public that Sunweb especially, and now Jumbo, super scientific, super high level. What's going on at Quickstep? They is that maybe the science isn't as hot, but the culture is just wild. It's just out of control.
So there's a release of a hormone named oxytocin that is pretty much the love drug, actually, but also it bonds humans together. It makes people give more of themselves as a result of culture, which is kind of what that oxytocin release really is when it comes to the neuroscience, which then releases the other chemicals that we were talking about in the last podcast, that dopamine, serotonin release. And they just give more of themselves because they're actually bonded together, and it actually means something to be a part of that team. So that wolf pack is not just a marketing ploy. I think whether they wanted to or not, they've created a culture of giving more of themselves for the benefit of others. And so that's why they do. I think they do so well. But also they've got a really good science background too. Like they know what they're doing and how to get athletes to perform at their highest level, physically and psychologically. But also have 15 guys that can win. Wimbledon. They got 15 guys that can win Roubaix. So
Julian Alaphilippe didn't win the world championship off just culture. No, exceptional talent. How do you design that? Like, how is that created?
If I knew that, I wouldn't work in cycling, that's for sure. There's a lot of higher paying sports that look after that sort of that have been trying to figure that out for since sport existed. It's a difficult one, and a lot of it has to do with I think is getting personalities that are like-minded, and getting them to deliver and to be happy that somebody else is winning. So especially within cycling for sure, but it's different in basketball or another sport. But
Have you done any work with?
If I knew that question,
you wouldn't have time to talk to me.
No.
Do you do any work with Lefebvre? Have you come across him in your athlete workings at all?
Not personally, no. So I have athletes that have worked with him, and not over. Most definitely. So you can say whatever you like about how he deals with his team, but he backs his athletes. Without fail. It doesn't matter what that athlete does, he'll take the heat for that athlete. And then deal with that, whatever the ramifications of that in-house. And as a team principal, that then gets the athlete to deliver and be able to say, no, Pat's got my back. Patrick got my back. So I will do what it takes to, I'll go above and beyond what I need to, So have a look at Julian Alaphilippe at the World Champs or somewhere this year. He actually was hugging Patrick Lefebvre and saying, "Did I do a good job?"
Yeah.
So, it means that they seek the approval of their boss, which is amazing. Yeah, that's a special environment. Yeah.
And you look at the yield that they get on their race year; it's just wild. The results, it's out of control.
Yeah.
And then I think that was proven, if you would doubted that at all, at the Giro, when all of a sudden they held the pink jersey for 3/4 of the race.
Yeah.
They just bring success.
I've forgotten his name. Almeida, is that right?
Almeida, yeah.
Yeah. Has his own share of talent to be able to do that in the first place. But you have a look at their mountain support, go above and beyond just because of that. I think that was a cause for concern for quite a few teams.
Yeah. You were at the Giro, or were you not at the Giro? Were you at home?
Yep, I was there. I was there for the first 10 days or 12 days or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Inside Team INEOS?
Yes. So I went
there.
You
were there.
Sorry.
You were there for the roller coaster.
Which one?
The big build up. Well, the start of the roller coaster. The big build up for Geraint. The huge build up for Geraint. Everyone wanted just to see the last year's Tour de France winner go out the Giro to see what he can do. COVID's coming in. All of a sudden, Geraint's out of the race. Teams INEOS are on the back foot. Ganna comes out of the holes and he also won the opening stage, which we somewhat forget because it was so long ago.
I don't forget it. That was bloody impressive. Like the amount of power that come out of they got put down on that bike that's bloody impressive.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it more than you've ever seen?
For that weight? Oh, it's more than anyone. Like, yes. Yeah. For that time frame, it is. Yeah, it is world leading. Yep.
Well, obviously, he's got the rainbow stripes on his back, not by chance.
Yeah.
It
and also the 4K record too.
Exactly. Talk to me about that first week within the team.
So I went there to help them with their cognitive strategies around the time trial. Obviously worked with Rowan Dennis a bit, and the team had asked me to come in and give them a little bit of a hand in regards to the way so thought processes and also the way that they speak to their athletes. So cues and stuff like that in around the time trial. So I was there from the start all the way through to just after the first rest day. And so really impressive build-up. If you just think of the way that the Pipo did that first stage in the rainbow jersey, in his home country, with everyone thinking that if he doesn't win this thing, he's failed. And he delivered. Like there's not that many places where you're like, oh, I was there for that. That was impressive, And I don't think that got the amount of
recognition,
publicity, and recognition that actually took, because the amount of cognitive control that Pipo needed to actually be able to deliver and control that emotion, have that cognitive control to be able to actually put down a performance like that is, that's something else. And I was actually in the car for Rowan's TT, and I was scared in the car how windy it was. Like he nearly come down 4 or 5 times in that TT, and about, I think it was halfway through, there was an arch going over the road, and there was these plastic barriers on either side of this arch that we had to go through, and Rowan was like 150 metres from this arch, and the wind blew the barriers closed. And it's myself and one of the DSs, Ollie Cookson, said all of the 4-letter words under the sun. Rowan pumped his brakes, and luckily enough, 2 policemen opened the gates for him pretty much so he can actually keep going. But I've never been as scared for somebody's well-being while they're competing ever. That was, Rowan had no chance before he even started. Oh, not before he started, but had no chance after the top of that climb. So that wind was just, that was hooking. Yeah, that was scary. But and then from there, Pipo had the pink for quite a while, and then I actually can't remember the stage. Maybe 4. G decided that he'd have a bit of a lay down, liked the look of the bottle, and broke his pelvis, and that was a pretty devastating blow, not only for him personally, but for the whole team. And actually at the bus after that happened, and having a conversation with Dave Brailsford, and he was already saying, well, this is a great opportunity for us to change our style and to win as many stages as we can, because we don't get this opportunity very often. And he delivered a really rousing speech is probably the wrong word, but talk to staff and athletes in regards to that, and that's actually stuck with me. That was possibly one of the most impressive displays of management that I'd seen. And
what did he say?
I think just literally what I said before. Just we have this opportunity now. We have, I think 7 other athletes that have the ability to deliver exactly what we need out of this. Maybe we may not get to Milan in pink. However, we can win like just about every stage that's coming up. And they did. They had the personnel to be able to win anything that they wanted. So, but and poor G had to go home, and a very, very tough period for him, and still feel for him actually. Like even though the team had a unbelievable success, when you put that much being on the regime for that long to get to quite literally the form of his life at the start of that Giro, so far, I'll say, to come down in the feed zone before he can actually deliver, very tough mentally. And then, the rest was a bit of a roller coaster from there. It's pretty impressive.
Then Ganna was back on the hunt, picking up mountain stages. Was he just running
the mountain stages?
Was he just running on everything after winning that opening TT? He's got Italy behind him. He had the pink jersey for a little bit. Was he just unstoppable? Unstoppable. Or is that just
Tour.
Is that just him? Is that just what we need to expect for the next 5 to 10 years?
I don't think that. No, I don't think that. I think the very targeted. The team were very targeted in the way that they used their personnel to stage hunt. One thing that also doesn't get much publicity is Ben Swift run, I think top 22nd or something in the Giro. No one said that. He's a sprinter, and he gets what INEOS got out of that Giro, is far beyond impressive. So, but Pipo targeted some stages and delivered every single time. whether that continues is yet to be determined. But yeah, he's definitely on fire there. That's for sure. He's in a purple patch.
How did his cognitive load, is that the right term,
Yep.
compare from that opening TT where he'd just come off the back of the Worlds? He had Italy on his shoulders, literally.
Yep. First ever Grand Tour stage.
The first ever Grand Tour versus that second TT stage.
Yeah. So it was his first ever Grand Tour stage, and he won the pink jersey on his first stage ever. So like that is just mind blowing. But that second one, it was really a race between two bike riders, and they were in the same team. Rowan was on a stomper, and really delivered exactly what he thought was needed, and Pipo, bettered him, there's some power numbers there that are just as impressive as the first ones, that's for sure. But but definitely in a vein of form that it's rarely seen, that's for sure. Yeah.
When did Tao emerge? When was there whispers of Tao becoming the GC lead? Obviously he was the GC lead, but when did it start the rumors? Well, not rumors, but murmurs started going around that Tao could win this Grand Tour.
What, that he could actually win it, or that he'd go, but that we can be on the podium?
All right. First of all right, let's aim for the podium.
Okay, so he lost, I think, the minute and a half or something like that on Etna. So
and time in the opening TT.
Yeah. And so from there, he's by far the best bike rider in the race. From Etna on, like by far the best bike rider. And sorry, Australia, but that's the truth. And
all the listeners in Perth just tuned out.
Yeah, well, that's facts. So he'd always been in that top 10-ish, and it was always I got asked by Tim Kerrison to give Tao a bit of a hand in regards to how he was getting through the Giro and beyond. The first whisper of that was maybe the TT. I'm trying to get onto the podium. Now that second TT, and then try and do something in the mountains before the Stelvio stage to see actually where he was, but actually in relation to the other climbers in the race, specifically Jai and Wilco. So, yeah.
What is it? What do they ask you? What do they say? What are the athletes in that scenario where Tao's going, all right, so I'm going to make it to the podium? What are they worried about, or what do they query about?
So what we did with Tao is make sure that he didn't know what was going on. So we reduced that cognitive load of him doing that by using others within his team to get him to do what the team needed him to do. So he was oblivious is the wrong word, but he was just having a lot of fun, making sure that he was in the right spot at the right time, and riders like Rowan and Ben and who else was there? The 7 other bike riders or 6 other bike riders that were there were actually getting him in a spot where he could actually deliver when he needed to deliver. So minimise the amount of kilojoules that were expended to then have them when they're needed. Yeah.
Without saying at the start of the stage,
telling
Tao, you're the guy. Like, come on, boy, get to work.
But that was only really the Stelvio that changed fractionally. It was like, let's do everything. And that was like Swifty start climbing, and then Rowan's on Swifty's wheel, and then Tao behind. And there was some gamesmanship when it came to the way that INEOS used their communication to then make another team think that they were in a more commanding position than they were.
Is that the only opportunity he's ever going to have to be in that scenario? Every race going forward, he's the leader. He's got all the pressure on his shoulders.
Oh no, I don't think so. I think you'd be very like, you have a look at the amount of Grand Tour talent that INEOS has on their roster. You'd be quite naive to think that that he'd be a sole leader within his development moving forward for at least a couple of years, I think. I think there was, like, he wasn't a sole leader going in for a start. No, that was G. So I hope it's not his, like, I believe it's not his only opportunity to win a Grand Tour. And he took that opportunity. I think he's got definitely more opportunities in the future. But I think it's just come earlier than what anyone expected, that's for sure.
Yeah. Versus over at Team Sunweb, Wilco's got his name written on the top of the podium. He knows it. He can feel it. The team's riding for him.
Yeah. So at minimum podium chance, you'd think, at Sunweb. So I do research with one of the sports scientists at Sunweb named Dr. Dio Sanders, who trains Jai and Wilco. And it's actually one of my best friends within cycling, within one of my favourite colleagues at least. And so we had this great little game of INEOS versus Sunweb. And so both of his riders, Jai and Wilco, doing extremely well. Like, there's very few people in the world that have trained two athletes to the same podium of a Grand Tour. That just in itself is amazing. So it just so happened that a rider that I was working with at the time bettered his rider. So there was really conflicting emotions when it came to our friendship on a couple of days there, that's for sure.
And then what about Tao coming into that Stelvio stage?
Yeah.
What was he thinking? What was he asking at that point?
All that was asked of him was to hold on to Rowan's wheel, and then hold on to Wilco's wheel.
Which was proven to be more than enough.
Oh yeah. So, and in all honesty, if Rowan actually at some stage writes a book about this, he could have gone harder. So, so that's probably one of the best days that Rowan's ever had on the bike, that Stelvio day. So it was literally just make sure that once Wilco was in trouble, it was, what do we have to do to maximise Jai's cognitive load and to mess with him as much as possible mentally to get him to do what we needed him to by the TT at the end. And
the strategy was for Rowan to tear the bunch to absolute smithereens?
No, Swifty, actually. Yeah, Swifty and then Rowan. So, but it was going too slow and Rowan got a little bit trigger happy and blew everyone apart. Yeah. Yeah, there was, as Rowan started to go, Swifty looked over him and said said a nice couple of words. It was like, when am I going to get a go? And yeah, Rowan just went off. Yeah.
And to quote Chris Hamilton of Team Sunweb, I was sprinting on Rowan's wheel trying to hang on as he launched himself up the Stelvio. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about Rowan's Giro, in the sense that for the first time in a while, he's not the fastest TTR, probably the second fastest. But then to pull off arguably two performances that won the Giro for Tao, like.
Tao won it himself. Like, without a shadow of a doubt, Tao won that Giro, and I think Rowan shaped it. Yeah, highly shaped it. I think it's a little bit of a misnomer when it comes to people saying that Rowan won the Giro for Tao. Sorry, I've lost the question.
But back to Rowan's Giro. Mm-hmm. How does it affect an athlete when they go from that top step and all of a sudden there's not a new kid on the block? Everyone knew who Ganna was, but he's stepped up to the plate. He's delivering. How does that affect an athlete?
So we had Giro and Worlds preparation. So when we found out, and I'm saying we as a collective we here, when Rowan found out World Championships were on a flat course, 30 kilometres, we knew that there was going to be a very difficult proposition to deliver. It would have had to been one of his best days ever to even hang with Pipo. He went out in that World Championships to win. He's not interested in getting on the podium at all. Doesn't interest him. So he went out on a strategy to keep with Filippo Ganna on that first split. And we actually were within where we needed to be on that first split. And he couldn't hold that on the cross tail on the way home. And bloody impressive by Filippo Ganna. But during that preparation, we also knew that he needed, one of his major goals from whenever we started to work together was he wants to be a part of a Grand Tour winning team. That had never happened in all of his entire career. And one of the massive things as well is a lot of the mainstream media think that Rowan's selfish and does everything for himself, and anyone that has actually that knows him anywhere other than the mainstream media knows that that's 100% not the case. And if you want to make Rowan extremely angry, you'd say to him, "You're not a team player," because he will show you how much that he is. One of the biggest joys of mine when it came to Rowan's performances in the Giro was the fact that he silenced a lot of critics when it came to him being a team player, when it comes to producing performances in regards to whatever T-shirt that he's in, that's for sure. And there's been very highly publicised critiques on Rowan Dennis in regards to his character, and that character was shown given the right environment to be the one that I've always known and most of the people around him have always known. Yeah, so that was impressive. Made me very happy, that's for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine you being a very happy camper as he stomped his way up Stelvio.
Actually, Stelvio thing was just like, yeah, that's impressive. Like he's on a stomper. You can tell the one that was unbelievably impressive was his Sestriere. that was even better. Like that was just like, whoa, yeah. Like as even from an outsider, like just as a pure spectator, that was a spectacle of a performance. That Sestri, that was him looking across to Jai and just giving him a smile and just going, mate, and just sort of shaking his head like, what are you doing? And just riding past him.
Yeah. Oh, dear.
Yeah.
So if we look at the Giro, we had Jai, Tao, like you said, maybe not a surprise that they were performing like they are, but I think it's fair to say it was a bit ahead of time. It wasn't like, all right, this is the year for Tao to win a Grand Tour, for Jai to finish on the podium, for
but even
Almeida to be in the pink, Hershey to dominate, Pogacar to win the Tour. The youth rose to the top in the COVID year.
Yep.
Can you talk about that from a psychological perspective on athletes, the younger guys, how they've managed it and the outcome of it?
So I have my own little theory on that, whether it's true or not. So another thing. When you just come into the year was that fractured that the younger generation did really well dealing with that change, where they kind of just roll with the punches and like, oh, okay, it is what it is, and I'm just going to keep going. Where the guys that had been around for a little bit longer seem to struggle with that, with some notable exceptions, like Port being one.
Yeah,
did okay this year, and yeah, so there's a few notable exceptions to that, but the rise of the youth psychologically, I don't think that there's as much of a hierarchy anymore either within the peloton. Like they're not put in their place, so to speak. So they can just go out and win for winning's sake, which is impressive, which is really good. Where I wasn't around within professional cycling in the 90s and 2000s, but I don't know if that happened previously. But it's definitely slowly moved forward. Even Remco Evenepoel, right?
Yeah.
Before he,
poor Remco, he's just forgotten about.
Yeah, well,
he was unbelievable at the start of the year.
Yeah, he come out pretty hot. But yeah, so like the youth can actually, they don't know any different, so they can, they don't have a 8, 9, 10 season long. I do it this way, and my season starts at openings weekend. Or my season starts Torino or whatever. They're like, oh no, my season. Who cares if my season starts in the middle of June? It doesn't matter. Where I think that messed with the heads of quite a few athletes.
Yeah. So do you think next year we could see a level, or assuming next year's normal, maybe not even next year, the year after? Fingers crossed, we could see those older guys that maybe lacked a bit this year come back into the norm. We're not seeing a shift of all of a sudden it's just going to be normal for a 21-year-old, 22-year-old to win the Tour de France.
No. You have a look, like Roglic still won the Vuelta.
Yeah.
Like Richie still got third at the Tour. Well, like there's still some older guys. Like, it's not all 21-year-olds winning everything. There's some. There's more than there probably ever has been, but they've also got access to training methods that are more highly tuned than maybe they have in the past as well. So, every 12-year-old's got a power meter these days.
Yeah. good and bad.
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and for what it's worth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those methods are changing. So yeah.
So we're heading
That's happening
into
across any sport, I suppose. You look at the soccer, football. They have youth academies that are 8, 9, 10 years old.
Mm. We're heading into an Olympic year again for the second time.
Yeah.
Take 2.
Yeah.
I think this was a discussion at the last podcast, but we were talking about that was pre-COVID days. What's that looking like? You working with
not
Rowan
overly sure yet.
specifically?
Yeah, I've got a few going to the Olympics. Not overly sure at the moment. The whole Olympic thing there's a grey area there at the moment. I think it'll go ahead. I think everyone's thinking that it will. It's going to change a few people's thought processes. I think there's a lot of tension within track programs across the world that are struggling with an extra year, and I think that's going to be the same on the road, just because a whole year there's athletes that are going specifically for the Olympics, and that's a major target, and then that has to then go across to the following year, and which detracts somewhat from their trade teams. So I think there's going to be a little bit of tension at times when it comes to teams in the Olympics. When it comes to athletic, the psychological aspects are exactly the same. It's just the goalpost moved from 20 to 21. It's the same goalpost. They're still they look exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, but nothing's really changed from my perspective. It's still the same build-ups, the same. But I think there's going to be some tensions elsewhere, that's for sure, and also some extra thought processes in regards to COVID and how that's going to look at the Olympics. So you can't just rock up to Tokyo. What does it look like? So yeah.
How does it affect your research? In terms of, I know last time when we caught up about the Happy Watts, the actual paper you write was in the hands of, was it the German Cycling Federation?
FES, yeah. So that's still after Tokyo.
Yeah, so they get another year of it.
Yeah, so my affiliation's moved. So I'm now at the University of Maastricht, working with Dr. Dio Sanders and under the Neutrum Lab there. And but all of those papers will be delivered when they're outside of non-disclosure clauses.
Is there more research going on right now? You want to like the next project?
Not the next project, the continuation of the data set that we've got.
Yeah. How long do you see that going for?
46
Forever?
now, hopefully for as long as possible. Yeah, I enjoy doing it. So, yeah.
Is there like a question that you like? Something that's like, I just need to work that out. I just need to solve that.
Oh yeah, there's lots of them. There's lots and lots of them. Yeah, there's. Yeah, that's one thing I can't really say too much about. But yeah, there's questions there that are whether they remain unsolvable. I'm not sure, but there's lots of things. So, what makes a stomper? What makes Rowan do what he did on the Stelvio? What makes, for an example, Roglic do what Roglic did on Planche de Belfield? What makes Taddy do what Taddy did on Planche de Belfield? So that's not.
That's a good question. That's a good question to answer.
Yeah,
Is
I've got an idea. I can't though, but yeah, I do.
You can't tell me. So always, obviously, we've been big fans of your work since the start. Big believers in your role in a team. In terms of how you see cycling now and how you've seen it kind of evolve, I think I ask you this question every podcast. Are they adopting psychology more? Is it being taken on? Are athletes being well looked after?
Not sure. This year's been a difficult one in regards to my work, because it's just, and not just mine, sports scientists, trainers, soigneurs, team principals, everyone's had a year that they'd rather sort of move on from. So we're in the same position, I think, as this time last year. Yeah. So athletes, I think, are taking it upon themselves a little bit more, especially with this whole pandemic thing. I think they've decided that they've needed extra help. Not, there's lots of people that do that. I'm not the only one that does athlete welfare stuff. Yeah, so from what I understand, athletes are getting a little bit more versed in what's needed to provide themselves with healthcare. But yeah, when it comes to team stuff, I'm outside of a team, so I don't really know.
Yeah, but you're at capacity.
Almost.
You can't take on. Yeah. So there is high demand.
Yeah, whether that's high demand for athlete welfare stuff or my other strategies that I use to cognitive control stuff. Yeah, I have different sections of my business. Yeah, like I think we've spoken about this outside of a podcast. I always have a few spots that I leave spare for acute situations where people need me, just because they're the ones that I also find fun, for want of a better word. But they're the challenging ones that I like to work out and go, you need to go and see this specific person. You need to see a sports psychologist, or you need to go and see a psychiatrist, or we need to admit you into some help. So those, with any job, when it's all sailing along easy, jobs are easy. But whether, like, I have the most enjoyment in my job when I see athletes through the other end of a challenging situation that they didn't think that they could get through.
Yeah.
Specific, like for an example, Rowan finishing the end of last year the way that he finished, and then getting to the Giro and doing what he did at the Giro, silencing critics. That made me, that stuff, that floats my boat. That's the reason why I do what I do.
Yeah. Do you ever think of like training other people, or like scale, or how you can spread your wisdom further?
Does anyone want it?
I don't know. Apparently.
I don't know. Well, they've got my number, don't they?
Yeah. Last question to wrap things up. Out of this year, there's obviously been a lot of learnings. The world's progressed in many different ways. Do you think cycling will change out of COVID, or we'll just go back to what we had?
It's a difficult question to ask. I actually don't know. No one's been through this. So I hope it changes for the better. I do, because there's an opportunity there to reset and right some detriments to overall sport. There is an opportunity there that whether the powers decide to take that opportunity or not remains to be seen. So I really hope so. Like I'm what's the right word? I'm optimistic when it comes to an improvement, but also there's some pessimism there because the sport's been around for a while and it got to this stage, and it's got to worse stages in the past. But so yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, Dr. David Spindler. It's been a pleasure as always, and we look forward to checking in again sometime in the near future.
Number 4.
Yeah, your annual spot.
Yeah. Thanks, mate.